Who's ready for the weekly welding video? Hey guys, how's it going? So today we're gonna finish that archway, and then from there we're gonna take a look at a mistake that I made and the steps that you're gonna have to take to fix it. It's gonna be great. We're gonna see some prep work, and we're gonna do a little experiment to see why it is we do the things we do. So here's a tube, pretty standard, and then yeah, oh no, yikes. So that was a great montage of how we're going to prep these parts. Now you'll notice that I have those two pieces of angle that are keeping this somewhat straight. And now that everything is beveled out in that nice V groove, I've got it tacked, and I'm just going to put a little weld in there now and go all the way around. And once I get enough reinforcement, I'm going to grind that down. You'll see that in the next clip here. Now we're going to take the weld down. I have a 36 grit sanding pad that I'm using to dress the weld. I'm trying not to take away from the parent material and create a dip. Pulling the grinder and making light, easy passes will help ensure better results. It's better to take your time than rush this process. Once we're done with all four sides, we'll use the orbital sander to get all those deep grinding marks out, and so it's ready for paint. Now here's the orbital sander, and I'm continuing to use it until I have a nice uniform surface for the paint to adhere to. Now what we're going to show you guys is the difference between a beveled and a square groove joint. We're going to cut and etch this later and compare them with a ground and finished weld sample. Here you can see the left sample has reinforcement on the back side as well as weld reinforcement on the front side, while the sample on the right only has weld reinforcement on the front side. This doesn't necessarily mean that the right sample is weak, but we can tell the left sample, once ground down, will have complete joint fusion. In this clip, you can clearly see the prep joint had complete fusion and about a 1/16 of an inch of reinforcement. The left sample in the video, you can still see the joint lines and how they were not broken down with weld penetration.
Harley, do you know about weld symbols?
Well, does that mean yes? Now, to really understand what you need to do, you have to be able to read weld symbols. Now, this repair didn't have a weld symbol, but hopefully by the end of this video, you could see and interpret what would be the welding symbol. First off, this chart has a lot going on, so we'll start off with the basics. The first thing you're going to see is the weld symbol, which will always be on there. Some of the stuff won't always be on there because it isn't necessary. Here is another chart that shows different examples of both groove weld symbols and other joint type weld symbols. The three most common are going to be the fillet, V-groove, and flare bevel weld symbols. Different arms of the industry might have a different list, but in general fabrication you will see these the most. Here we can put a fillet weld symbol to show you where you would expect to see this. Next we are seeing the groove size, which is the one in the parentheses. If you see a number here without them, it is referring to the S variable, which is the prep size of the joint or weld size. If it is not a groove, the E value usually indicates the allowable reinforcement on the interior and exterior weld surface. The circled R variable is referring to the root gap that a groove weld might have. Usually in most codes it is an 1/8 inch for an open root and 1/4 inch for the backer plate, which is indicated on the back weld side with a welding symbol where the reinforcement will be. A backer plate is a piece of metal that holds two bevel plates together, and the welding process joins all three plates. This is mainly seen in structural welding. Here we can see a flag indicating that this weld needs to be made in the field, while the circle around the bottom tells us that we need to weld all the way around. At the back side of the weld, we have an optional tail where you can have notes like use a 7018 rod or a certain process that they would like. Now, when you see numbers to the right of the weld symbol, you know that this is either telling you the length of the weld or the length and the distance between each weld. The distance between is the pitch, and it is measured from center to center. Here is a quick diagram showing you so you won't get confused and misweld this part. You can see if you are having a 1-inch weld with 3-inch spacing, the end and the beginning only have a 2-inch space because there's a 1/2 inch on each side. The arrow pointing to the joint is connecting the reference line to the joint. The side the symbol is on dictates where the weld will go. Here you can see if it is on the top, it is on the other side of the arrow, and if it is on the bottom, it is on the arrow side. Here is a quick drawing of a T-joint showing us what it would look like if we were to weld it according to the weld symbol. Now we are looking at a V-groove butt joint with an 1/8 inch gap. The groove angle is going to be 60 degrees, which means that each plate will have a 30-degree bevel. We are adding the flat contour along with the G symbol for grind, so when the weld is complete, we will grind it flush. We have a 1 1/8 weld groove size with a 7/8 bevel prep. If the thickness of the material is 1 inch, that means the landing or flat part of the bevel is 1/8 inch thick. The reinforcement symbol on the back with a 1/16 inch mark shows that we have to have 1/16 inch weld penetration. So now we are going to move this to the side and show you what this weld would actually look like. First, we're putting in our root pass where we would get our weld reinforcement. Next, we fill the groove out until we get to the top and tie in all the edges together. Once we have had the weld inspected and checked off, we can use a grinder to grind it flush. It is important to remember that all CJP welds need to be the material thickness or greater at any point in the weld.